Workbar, and I know a lot of you have questions about what this space is. So.
Hi, my name is Kelly. I'm the Space and Community Manager of Workbar. We are a co-working space really focused on community and collaboration. I would love to talk to you guys if you are curious about it, so you can find me afterwards if you have questions.
Great, thanks. Okay, so a little bit about tonight and the format of what we're doing. We have 8 speakers, maybe 9 speakers, who are going to be sharing stories that need to be under 5 minutes. I should have checked in with Shoshi, where is she, before this. We want to play like a little sound when you're getting close to 5 minutes. Sorry, I shouldn't tell you this. So when you're up here, you have 5 minutes, we'll have someone up here, and when you hear a little noise, that's just letting you know that you're getting close to the end of your time.
How embarrassing is the noise make?
Embarrassing. Really embarrassing. The best that you got, yeah.
I actually know that stopwatches on iPhones produce embarrassing noises, but we'll figure it out.
The robot.
Yeah. Okay. So when you hear, we'll give you like a little warning when you've reached 5 minutes. You can go a little bit over 5, but when you hear the second one, like wrap it up. And just for those of you who don't really know what the theme is this evening, we have various creatives, and we define creative broadly. So anyone who's working in a field that involves innovation or creativity, entrepreneurialism, we want to hear from you. So those are the people that we brought in today. And they have, again, 5 minutes to share a story about, we're calling it the moment that it happened, creative career wins and fails. So this could be a time that somebody failed miserably, which I have a feeling a lot of the stories are going to be that, and have someone learn from that and move forward, or how someone succeeded and how that motivated them to really move forward in what they were doing. So that's a theme for the night. This is our first time doing this format, so I don't know how the night's going to go, but we're excited. I'm going to introduce our first speaker.
Can I get a picture of all of you?
Yes.
All right, whatever you want to do. 1, 2, 3.
Yay.
Okay.
Okay. Up first, we have Nick Chalyapov, who is a freelance interactive designer and art director. Some of his work includes the international website for Django Unchained. You all should check out his work online. It's really cool. That's among other really cool and unique projects. He also is the founder of Curious Sound Objects, which is a group that establishes an outlet for various interactive sound forms that celebrate sound, making music, and community. And he has also given lectures at the Harvard Graduate School of Design. So let's welcome Nick. Thank you.
Is there a timer somewhere? It's like, oh, never mind. Okay. I am here to tell you my recent adventures in redesigning my portfolio, actually, and mindful birthing. So my wife is pregnant, and we're expecting a boy in February. And professionally, I do 2 things. I do a lot of design and direction for mostly advertising, and now recently sort of startup smaller clients, because that's a lot more fun. And I also run the Curious Sound Object Show. The Curious Sound Object Show I have no real baggage about, so I'm going to focus on my work, because I recently discovered something in this mindful birthing class that was really useful. So a couple weeks ago, we're sitting, the mindful birthing class is like a 10-week meditation class, basically in the context of having a baby. And so the teacher, yeah, but like the lessons, anyway, so I've learned a few things. So 2 weeks ago, she's talking about how labor starts when the ratio of contraction to rest is like 1 minute to 5 minutes or so. And so she's like, hey, in an hour you have what feels like 12 minutes of pain, but really you spend the rest of the time remembering how painful the last moment was and like anxiously anticipating the future. I'm like, okay, so she just drew it. Like, here you are most of the time, but you're thinking about that and thinking about that. So it's kind of like being in the present moment situation. So because I'm having a baby, I'm redoing my portfolio, and it's been the same since 2009, like the portfolio you saw. And it has a lot of like brandy stuff and movie stuff that I actually no longer want to do. So I'm sitting there. Yeah, and that work lost its luster after a few years. You know, when I was in my mid-20s, I was like, oh yeah, I'm driving around LA and I'm making things, and I feel like I had something to do with something important maybe or something. Anyway, so I'm sitting in front of it, and for days I was like totally energetically constipated. Like, like the work's not hard. You know, I'm making images and all this stuff, but I was like, all of this shit was happening in my head, and so I get up and I call my friend. This is another friend in LA who's been an animator for The Simpsons and Family Guy and American Dad. So I'm like, how are you doing? He's like, dude, he's quitting his job because he wants to do his own thing, and I'm pretty excited for him. And he says, dude, what if I'm making a huge mistake? What if nothing comes out of my thing? And what if I have to come back crawling for a job and I get a shittier job than I have now? And I'm like, man, that's so funny, because here I am sitting in front of my portfolio thinking, well, what if I finish it and then I get stuck doing work I don't want to do? And so we both laugh, because he hasn't even quit his job yet, and I haven't even finished my portfolio yet. You know, but we're like spending all of this time sort of like anxiously anticipating an event that may or may not even happen. Like, I guess in the sense of a contraction, like it's gonna happen. But like, you know, but like, why is it that our minds go towards or sometimes my mind at least goes towards a situation that's like the worst one, and then starts like fretting about it? It's like almost the point of like inaction. And so, you know, I sat down and I'm like, okay, so what am I actually afraid of? You know, it's so simple, it almost feels silly to say, but I responded with, I'm afraid of working with people with whom I don't have a clear line of communication, promoting things I don't care to promote. I'm like, okay, that about sums up the work part of my work that I don't enjoy. And so what's like the inverse of that is I would like to work with people with whom I do have a clear line of communication with, promoting things I do care to promote. And so that was my takeaway. So all of a sudden, like, it's as if I discovered, you know, I'm like 34, and you know, it's obvious, like that's advice I would give to a friend, but it was so freeing. It was freeing in a way that, like, the rest of it just became work. And so, how much more time do I have?
50 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make this really fast. In the baby mindfulness thing, she asked us to look at a raisin, and she's like, find the navel of the raisin, think about how it used to be a grape, and like the sun and the earth and all the stuff went into it. And I'm like, you know, I mean, you kind of buy it. You're like, hey, there's the sun and the earth and like the water and the people and all this other stuff. And so I'm thinking like, holy shit, the universe is in this raisin. Yeah. You know, but like for me, it doesn't actually take like a leap of faith or anything, because you can kind of imagine, you know, like the sun is in the raisin. And so I was reading a guy named Alan Watts recently, and he's like, well, if you can accept that, like, why can't we accept that about ourselves? You know, like, we kind of take ourselves to be different, separate from each other, and all these things, like I am this like driver of the body and stuff like that. And so what he said that really made a big difference, and also the way I'm going to relate to my clients, he's like, what if just how you have nerve endings, what if we are nerve endings in the universe looking inwards on itself?
Thank you for the free beer. He started a PhD in genome sciences at MIT, and that is where he met his co-founders. And in starting Aeronaut, Ben and his partners sought to blend their passions for science and brewing to create a unique community space.
Set stopwatch for 5 minutes.
We'll give you an extra minute if it's like really.
Oh, this is great. Don't do that.
Hey everyone. When this series began, it's an interesting story that Abby, Shaw, and I were in a building right over that way for what I may understand to be the first Creative Somerville talk. Is that correct? Yeah. I think that's correct. So I told them the story of getting a brewing system which was too big for our kitchen, but could just barely fit in our backyard. And that was a story of getting a U-Haul and driving this crazy thing across the state. And it was cool. The cool part about the story, the moment it happened, in that case, is that we had been working with this farmer to truck this big old set of prison kettles out of the barn, and we'd used a tractor with some kind of a dragging hookup to put them on the back of this U-Haul trailer with no real railings. And we were preparing to drive it from Troy, New York to Boston, Massachusetts, and we didn't have any kind of tie-downs or straps. So we just set it there, and the thing was that it only had 3 legs. There were 2 kettles, only 3 legs on one of them. Supposed to have 4. And so we put some cinder blocks in the little trailer that we were going to use to take these huge, massive kettles on the highway, unstrapped, no walls, across I-90, at I guess ideally 60 miles an hour. And the moment that it happened in this case, the reason that Aeronaut succeeded from this story is that as we were packing up to get on the highway, we looked at the cinder blocks and we looked at the 1-ton kettle with the 3 legs, and the kettle was kind of sitting on the edge of the cinder blocks. This was like boat trailer. And we said, hold on a second, take the tractor and let's lift the kettle up and let's kick the cinder blocks in a little farther because it looked a little sketchy. And it looked very, very, very sketchy. And so when we arrived in Somerville, 3 hours later, I-90 is not supposed to take that long, but it took a while. And we get there, and this ironically large, it seemed large at the time, this kettle, was balanced on 3 legs and the last centimeter of a stack of cinder blocks. If anyone can imagine that this thing has randomly shifted all over the place while it's been driving, and it has migrated to the very, very edge. And if there hadn't been the kick as we were getting ready to leave, they would probably be rolling still on I-90. And we wouldn't have a brewery. We'd most likely be in jail. So that was the story that I got to tell at this first Creative Summer. That was one moment when it happened. It was a cool thing, a fun thing that happened. So I have a second story which follows up and takes it 6 months later. Maybe in a couple years I'll get to hang with Happy Shaw and tell a third one when we have a way bigger brew system like I was telling you about. But this, I'm going to tell you about the brew system, not the 60-gallon one that we eventually had to give away for scrap because our landlord told us he would throw us out if we didn't. But the one that 6 months later, after we had the momentum and we had this material commitment to these things which we had hauled from very far away, once we had that commitment, we actually went all in on a huge system which we didn't know how to use. And that was really cool. So I'm going to tell that story quickly. And it has rocket ships. And, I only have a minute.
You have your time, don't worry.
The story has a rocket ship. And it has hard drinking. Who's been to Aeronaut? Some people have been to Aeronaut. So those kettles that you see when you go into the place, you look to your left, you see these big shiny things. It's pretty cool. We make a lot of beer in them. We make about 2,000 gallons of beer every week in those things. And how do we find them? Well, it's a story of completely foolish hubris. We were on the internet, just like we were when we got our first little kettles. And we saw this sweet electric sounding brew system in Florida that had been cobbled together by an engineer, an aerospace engineer, named Brad, who no one knew. And for some reason, because it seemed like a scarce commodity, it wasn't. There's brew systems all over, but this one seemed scarce to us. Because it was so cool looking. I think we just really wanted to start a brewery. We put a down payment, ridiculously, of almost $10,000 on this kettle. It's a brewery that you see when you walk into Aeronaut. And we decided the first thing to do was to fly down there and to learn how to use it in a day. And the upshot was that we got there and there was a series of situations which happened and led to me being stranded and hitchhiking across the state for some time. and getting very, very intoxicated in another brewery. And in the end, at 4 o'clock in the morning, my partners had flown into the town, and we all wandered to this brewery, and where we were going to learn how to brew, because you start brewing at 4 o'clock in the morning, and which is too early. And so we tried, and we learned for a little period of time, but there was a lot of engineering that we didn't understand at all. And we did know that there was a rocket launch happening at Cape Canaveral that day, so we did a period of brewing, and then we hopped in the car, and we went and we hitchhiked once again, but this time we got to the edge of the water. And we got to the edge of the water, hitchhiked onto a fishing boat, and we hopped on, we saw manatees, and we got to go all the way out into the bay and watch this beautiful rocket, a Saturn V, take off. I think it's Saturn V. We immediately, the people that I was on the boat with were the people that made it possible to start this thing. And we all got back to shore when the rocket was done, and we agreed to hire a brewery engineer that would help us and taught us how to do it. So that was really interesting. That was fun stories.
At Studios, architecture and research firm. She's a member of the faculty at the Boston Architectural College and adjunct professor at Wentworth Institute of Technology. She has a background in architectural design, contracting, and construction.
Hi guys. So, yes, my background is architecture, contracting, construction, and academia. And no one ever wants to hear any stories about academia, architecture, or any of that. They want to hear construction stories. Those are the most fun. So, I thought I'd oblige. I'm going to tell you guys about my very first day on a construction site. I had finished my degree in architecture. I never wanted to be anything but an architect. I didn't want to be anything, I didn't even know what an architect was. But I wanted to be the person who understood how buildings went together. So, luckily I figured out that person needs to go to architecture school. So I went there. And when I finished, I was somewhat bitten by the bug of trying to understand how buildings went together in the field. I was like, I've been drawing a lot of things. I want to understand how these things go together. So, unlike any of my peers graduating from a very nice university after 4 years of hard work, I got a job at a construction company in the field as a laborer. I learned very quickly to keep my degree to myself, and keep a lot of things to myself. But my first day, so I showed up. Has anyone here worked construction? Yeah! Awesome. So on my first day, I showed up and we were jackhammering out a basement. So the two guys who I was working with, bigger than me, handed me the jackhammer like this. I took it in my hands and I said, well, how much does this weigh? He says, about $1.35. And I said, oh, he said, how much do you weigh? I said, about $1.35. And I was like, all right, well, I probably shouldn't do this job. So he takes it back. So I said, well, what job is left for me? So he gave me 2 5-gallon buckets and he said, you can haul rubble. I said, okay, I can do that. So my job was to put the rubble into the buckets and then carry it, up the stairs, up another flight of stairs, and then out the door, and then hoist it up over my head into the dumpster. So I was like, I got this. So I started doing that. And after about the 5th or 6th trip, I was really struggling with the lifting it over my head thing. And there was a window perfectly positioned. The guys in the basement, they could look up and they could see me pushing this bucket up over my head, and I could see them like, is she gonna do it? So I said, okay, well, I'm an architect, so I built myself a stair. They wondered what I was doing because I was up there for quite a while, you know, and I hadn't come back down with my empty buckets, and they're like, what's she doing up there? I said, don't worry, I built myself a stair so that I could climb up the stairs and like do the bucket like that. I said, there we go. And so he said, great, well that's fine, as long as that means you can keep hauling buckets. I was like, I can keep hauling buckets. So halfway through the day, you know, I started having trouble again. I should back up and explain what the building actually was that I was in, that we were doing the basement. It was an architecture firm. I'm not kidding. So I was literally carrying buckets. I'm in my like bibs, my bib overalls. Got my hair pulled back, got everything, and I'm literally carrying these buckets. And I'm like this through an architecture office past my former classmates who were sitting there and looking at me going, what is she wasting time doing all this? What's she doing? She's wasting her degree, she's wasting her time. At the end of that first day, even with my stairs, I was very, very, very tired. I soon learned, I worked construction for 4 years. I'm not in the field for that whole time. But I started eating 6 meals a day. I'm not kidding. It was awesome. I was 22, eating 6 meals a day, working on these crews. It was great. At the end of that first day, I remember I called my dad and I said, I don't know if I can do this. This was really hard. I built my stairs, but I can't do it. And he's like, well, just go back in tomorrow and 1 foot after the other and, you know, see how it goes. And damn if I didn't do that for a week. 5 days. I still feel it, you know? And I remember thinking, every time I walked past everyone who was sitting at their desk doing what I was supposed to be doing, that I was a huge failure. I was literally carrying the rubble from the basement of an architecture office. Like, it doesn't get any more, like, poetic than that. But turns out it does. Because when I had finished that week, and they were like, good job. And I soon discovered all kinds of things working construction. I got more stories. I could fill up hours with them, but I know I find them. But I discovered all kinds of amazing strengths that I had, whether it was my brain or whether it was my will, or whether it was the fact that I was the smallest person on the crew. That means you get all the shit jobs. Like, oh, she's small enough, that hole, I think she can fit down there. That happened a few times. But the people that I met in the construction industry taught me so much about all kinds of things. Some of it was construction. It made me a better architect. I never wavered from wanting to be an architect. It's still all I ever wanted to do. So I opened up my own shop about 3 years ago. That's what I do. Here in Boston, I build buildings. There's even some around that I've built that you may know. You may see. They're my babies. So I no longer carry rubble and buckets, but that really taught me a lot. And it really made me understand that a career, a calling, or a vocation is more than just that degree or that first job or whatever. That those 4 years in construction, those 2 years in grad school, those 3 years working for another firm here in town, those 2 years I took off to work in academia full time when I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. I want to be an architect again. I love teaching, but I want to be an architect. And then launching my own firm, which was pretty much the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. It goes back to those moments where I knew what was what. I knew what was what. I knew what I had done at the end of the day when I carried those buckets up. And I knew that I was learning something important. You know, at the time, you know, I joke about walking past my friends who were working their computers. But they did ask me a lot, why are you doing this, and what do you hope to get from this, and why are you wasting your degree? And now no one ever says that, ever. They're like, man, I wish I would have when I was 22. You know, you only have these chances once in a while. My brother, who's one of the most wise people I've ever met in my life, he always says, when you have a choice, choose the badass option. And you know what? He's right. He is right. Think about that. Think about a choice you have to make. Choose the badass option. It's going to be the best one every time. And that's all I have to say.
Partnerships manager for Brooklyn Boulders in Somerville. She has a background in event planning in both corporate and startup world with a focus on arts, music, and cultural events. She also was manager at Work Bar for 2 years prior to. So welcome, Abby.
Yeah, so like I said, or like she said, I used to work for Work Bar, and my story actually happened while I was working for Work Bar. In 2014, I was the events and digital media manager for Work Bar, Cambridge. Sitting in that space, and I was reading this article about this street performer who dresses up in a bear costume and wears a guitar. And he had gotten punched in the face by some jerk in Faneuil Hall, probably not even a Bostonian, probably just some rando tourist. Stole his money, broke his nose. Broke his spirit. He was feeling terrible. He was like, I don't want to work in Boston anymore. I don't want to try to walk around the streets of Boston. Boston's too violent. People in Boston are too mean. And I was like, sitting there reading this, and I was like, first of all, who punches Guitar Bear in the face? What the? Anyway, so I was pissed. And I'm listening to him talk about this, and I was just like, this isn't Boston. This isn't my Boston. I've been in Boston since I was 17. I love this city. I've been coming here since I was a little girl. It's my home, and I love the people here, and I love the culture here. And that's not Boston for me. So I was sitting there and I was like, man, someone should do something. Someone should do something for Guitar Bear to just make him feel happy. Like maybe a fundraiser or something like that. And I'm sitting there in my event space, like have my keys, my fingers on the keys, and I'm like, okay, I'll just make an event. I'll make an event, little event, no big deal. Put together this 10-minute Facebook event, shared it with a couple people. 2 minutes later, it's already got like 200 people that are coming to this thing. Like it went viral almost instantly. I kind of freaked out, but I was like, okay, no big deal. You know, I have room for 200 people at Work Bar, not this one. And I was like, and then a couple of people were like, I can't make it, but I want to contribute. How do I contribute? So I was like, all right. So I put together an Indiegogo like fundraiser page. Took me like 2 seconds, stole a photograph from a photographer, and just threw it up, put it on the Facebook page, and it started getting shares like crazy. I made a goal of like $2,000. I was like, of course a street performer is gonna love to have $2,000. Maybe it'll pay for some of his like broken nose medical expenses. Maybe it'll pay for a new guitar. I don't know. Maybe just put a smile on his face, you know? I wanted to make him happy because he makes me happy every time I see him. So I went to sleep that night, and I woke up the next morning, and it was about 8 hours later, and we had already gone way beyond our goal. We raised $9,000 just in that time. It was unbelievable. A week later, I just made a week to raise these funds. I thought it would take a week. We were over 10 grand. We had donations coming in from the Awesome Project. They donate money to artists. We had, I had the Middle East calling me up going, you're not gonna have room for 500 people. I had raffle prizes coming in. I had a Berkeley professor donate a new keytar for him. It was, I was, the next day I was getting calls from like every local news channel asking me to be on the news. I was on the news like 3 times in the following week. I'm just this like events manager. I'm just sitting in my space. I had 10 minutes of my time I put into this. And for me, it was a proving moment because I knew that I was right about Boston. I knew in that moment that I was right, that Boston isn't that kind of place, that Boston does care about artists, that Boston does care about the little guy, you know? I mean, we love the Red Sox. They used to be really the underdogs. They're not anymore. But we love those people who are struggling. We love people who put a smile on our faces. And that was this moment where I was like, I did it. I did something really small, just really little, and it changed this guy's life forever. And it changed my life too, because when I met him and I saw the guy that's underneath the bear mask, I cried. I openly wept. I can't even think about it. He cried too. He said that I was his angel. And he said it again and again and again in weeks to come, in months to come. And it all kept coming back to me. Like, it felt so wonderful to give just this little tiny bit of my time to this person, and it kept coming back. It's crazy what giving does. But what's really funny is that with fundraising, you never know what to expect. You never know if there's going to be some backlash, like what'd she really do with that money? Did she take it all for herself? I had to like write an expose about like what I did with every little cent and how I was able to give it to him. Because as it turns out, when you're a street performing bear, you have no bank account, you have no license, you have no social security card, you have nothing. You are living in poverty on the streets. You are jumping from gig to gig, hoping that you can make food to eat. And so I had to set up a bank account with a benefactor that was a friend of his that was giving him money in chunks. And it was one of those moments where I was like, I thought it would be so easy to just give. And it ended up being a little more than just a little easy. But it was one of the moments in my life that like changed how I felt about giving and giving back to my community. And it also just made me more of a Bostonian than I've ever felt in my life. Like, I lived in San Francisco, I lived in New York, but Boston is my home. So yeah, that's my story.
Nonprofit focused on building the ecosystem of civic engagement and social innovation through Greater Boston. Did I do that right? Sort of? Okay. He's currently on the Massachusetts Board of Generation Citizen and a mentor for Big Brothers and Europe. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the Creative Somerville series for having me today. I'm going to tell you a story about me and Jimmy Carter. All right. So for most people, Jimmy Carter is a president, statesman, diplomat, peanut farmer, but he's the one who taught me how to be an entrepreneur. So a little bit background on myself. As a kid, I always had this rebellious entrepreneurial spirit. I started a lot of little things in middle school. For example, I used to get all my middle school friends, they filled out this survey of their romantic ideal partner, and then I would matchmake them, right? these were little things that would get me through the day because I had too much energy, and that failed obviously, but that's just to demonstrate that I always had this entrepreneurial knack in me. Now what happened was, me and Jimmy, I'll backtrack a little bit. I went to Brandeis University, and for those who are not aware, Brandeis, what do you most associate Brandeis with? Don't be scared. Yeah, there you go. Brandeis has a strong Jewish tradition, and something to be very proud of because we started in the late 40s because a lot of times smart Jewish people were not allowed to go to some of these elite universities. So very proud institution, very proud that I went there. But at my junior year, President Carter at that time wrote a book called Peace, Not Apartheid. And it was a book that drove a little controversy on my little campus in Waltham, Massachusetts, because it spoke about the Israel-Palestinian conflict, and because of our heritage, our university's heritage, the Jewish culture, it was a pretty big deal, especially because President Carter was invited to campus to speak. So I want you to witness this, imagine this, and you would think this would be a big affair of having a former president to come talk about an international conflict. The trouble was that the Brandeis Committee didn't respond too positively to the point where our president didn't even attend the ceremony. He said he had a donor trip somewhere, but we can read through the lines, right? Now, personally, not that motivated, not that interested on the Israel-Palestinian conflict, but what transpired was that after President Carter came, students were up in arms, and then we had Alan Dershowitz come, and then people were upset that Alan Dershowitz came, so then we had someone named Norman Finkelstein come, and it was just back and forth about this conflict that I had no intelligence about. But I was so frustrated because President Carter, in his speech, said one thing. He said, don't read my book, don't believe anything I say, just go to the West Bank and experience yourself. Go, you students, go. So, for me, I was like, all right, you know what? I'm fed up with everything that's happening on campus. I wrote an email to like info@cartercenter.org, and I said, hey, I'll go. Nothing happened, no response back. I was, a few months later, I was at the admissions office, flirting with then to be my college girlfriend, and I get a phone call from a Southern gentleman. Not going to even embarrass myself by doing a Southern accent, but he said, hey, is this Justin? I said, yes, this is Justin. He said, this is Phil, I'm from the Carter Center, and we would like to give you money to go to the West Bank. And I said, oh, okay, well that's cool. He said, how much money do you need? I said, $30,000, and the next thing I knew, I was in the center of what would become a campus turmoil. So I was responsible, and here's the truth, a dirty little secret that even President Carter doesn't even know. I didn't even go to that speech, right? I didn't go hear him say and give out this challenge of saying, go young children to Israel and the Palestinian terrorists. Did not care about it. It was not an issue that mattered to me. So now I was leading a student delegation of 10, 12 kids, young people, to the West Bank, and there was two barriers that sort of stood in my way. Number one, Brandeis was not happy at all. They had an emergency late night meeting, and I got an email thereafter saying, you cannot associate this trip with Brandeis University. And I was pissed. And even to this day, I did not return to Brandeis campus until a year ago when they invited me to be a keynote speaker at one of their conferences, because students invited me, and I thought I should go for that. But it always gave me a chip on my shoulder. So they said, you can't do it. I said, I'm going to do it. And they said, okay, if you're going to do it, you can't say you're affiliated with Brandeis University. Problem number one solved. Problem number two was that my parents were scared. And I'm a very private person. I didn't even tell my parents about this trip at all. We were going to head out, and it was like 2 weeks before the trip, and I didn't have my passport, so I called my mom saying, hey mom, I need my passport. And she was like, why? What's going on? I'm like, oh, whatever. And for some reason, my sisters Google searched me or something, and there were some articles about me and all this trip and all this back and forth. And then my mom called me freaking out, like, you're not going to the West Bank, you're not going there, etc., etc. And it got to the point where she literally flew the day of to Boston to drop off my passport and gave me a hug, wishing me luck, right? So my mom right there is my inspiration. There you go. And we made it. Right? We did it. It was fantastic. We went through the West Bank, and I met people at refugee camps, these women who were entrepreneurs. We did video conferencing calls with students in the Gaza Strip. We met government officials. We went to everywhere from Ramallah to all Jerusalem and everything in between. Fantastic time. And here's my lesson to you all, because this sounds like a success, And it was, because thereafter, I started a nonprofit and it gave annual fellowships to students to go to the Israel and the West Bank. And we actually expanded to Ciudad Juarez and the El Paso border because we wanted to start to understand conflict zones, right? These barriers, these walls, like these regions where Mexico, Texas, Israel, Palestinian territories. And we raised a few $100,000. Great, I was a junior in college. Wow, right? But at the end of the day, and I started 3 more nonprofits in college, and I was top of the world. But here is my moment of truth. This is something I hate talking about. Because once I graduated college, and this is my one piece of feedback for anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur, because as many of us can attest, it's the most beautiful, authentic, passionate thing that you could ever do in your life. And the only way you can succeed as an entrepreneur if you are so passionate and authentically connected to the issue or problem that you're trying to solve. And my fraudulent behavior was that I started something because of my own impatience, which is a good quality of an entrepreneur, but I did not have a genuine connection to the issue, right? And that is the lesson that I learned when I graduated college, and I had opportunities to run these organizations full time, but I decided, after leaving my bubble of Brandeis, meeting so much more smarter people than me, realizing how difficult these challenges are, that a silly student who just got fed up should not be a thought leader in this space. So I closed up shop, and that's what happened. So, big picture, great story, great experience, taught me to hustle, got great press, but at the end of the day, the biggest lesson I learned from President Carter was that if you want to do something and be passionate and start and create, you have to really believe it. Otherwise, you'll be like me. Well, no, I'm doing pretty well. But anyway, thank you so much. Have a great night.
which is actually just around the corner here. It's a design firm, retailer, and distributor of goods for the home, office, and studio. Ryan designs and manufactures their own line of goods. On the side, he consults other businesses on design and marketing. His past experience includes roles as a senior interaction designer in large design consultancies such as IDEO and Arnold. Welcome, Ryan.
So real quick, how many of you guys have been to our store? All right, so I brought this small picture. Here it is. You guys can take one, they're at the table over there. You can grab a sticker as well. So I came here with my set list here of what I was going to talk about. But these guys, especially yourself, have inspired me to talk about something different. So Loyal has multiple levels. It's kind of a conglomeration of everything I learned at Arnold, everything I learned at IDEO, and a respect that I built over time for people who make things, people who have a passion that they follow, and they follow through. They actually get there. But I can't say that I make one thing and I make one thing extremely well. The one thing that I do is I design, and I can say that I do that pretty well. But the reason that Loyal is there, the reason that Loyal exists is because I have this passion for people who have passion projects. And that's pretty much what Loyal is full of. I try not to base the decisions on what we carry about being local or being international or even being made in China or wherever. I just care that they're well designed and somebody dedicated themselves to making them. So that's kind of like the underlying theme of Loyal. Okay, let's refer to the notes here. So Loyal has 3 layers. Loyal's a retail shop for the community and everybody who wants to engage with design at that level. It's secondly a design firm. So I have multiple clients that I do consulting for, whether it be graphic design or web design or marketing consulting. And then the third layer is a letterpress. So my wife runs a letterpress company, and she does custom wedding invitations and we actually just came out with this awesome set of greeting cards that are 80s lyrics written in 80s fonts that were done by a local artist named Monique. She works for us part-time. So, so the original plan for Loyal was to be a design firm. That was the goal. I'm going to make a place where I can sit and work and have a view and actually walk out the door to the street and not have to get into an elevator and like go up to like this weird level and like only be like eating out of this kitchen and talking to these people. So I had hoped to have this like hybrid design firm that like had an open door to the public, and it was a crazy idea. It kind of like formed itself over time, and I think that's kind of what I came to talk about today. And it's like what led me to change what it is and for what it is today, to be what it is today. And it was a series of risks that I took that equaled either success or failure. And the thing that I think that IDEO taught me best is that failure is a part of design, and you have to fail to grow, and you have to fail to learn anything. So they kind of teach you. It's, you know what a good analogy is like in skateboarding, they teach you how to fall. The best stories I could come up with to tell you that are like even close to an example are, I did some work for Ben at Aeronaut, you mentioned me earlier. When I met Ben, Aeronaut was like an empty room with pretty much what he described in his story, like a three-legged thing and like nothing else. And when I met Ben, he was like, "Oh, we're gonna open a brewery in like a month." And I'm like, "Where the hell is it?" So Ben and I, we spent some really late nights at Aeronaut, basically like finding all the junk that was in the building and like making a fake brewery and like walking through it and like having like I remember this one night where like I was so exhausted and I was like in the corner like this and like we just couldn't figure it out, and we had like every piece of the place out, and like we were looking at tape. We were like, what if the table was here? What if the table was here? But the cool thing about that is that what we were doing was we were failing privately, that's huge because I used to do a thing with you guys where I'd come there at like midnight, change it all, and then you'd come back in the morning and be like, oh my God, it's great, or like, oh, this is no good. So like what was happening was like it was low cost failure, and at one point we had to buy some things and turn that place into a brewery, and Ben is extremely successful with what he's done with the place, and I think that that is a great example of like failing safely. I think that's like what I feel like I came to in my self-reflection on the question that was asked me today. The other one that I was going to talk about is just at the shop, and like how do you turn a 200 square foot space into a studio or a retail shop. We use a lot of tape. I remember drawing in every corner pegboard patterns. So like the big thing about Loyal, for those of you who haven't been there, is that we have this like big pegboard that kind of like wraps inside of the architecture of the shop. And there was like a huge debate over whether the holes should be like this or like this. I mean, this is a huge decision that we're going to make, and it's going to actually cost us thousands of dollars to make this decision. It has to be right. So we drew them all on the wall, and we drew shelves, and we drew stuff. And we had this like sketch of a shop inside of our little box over there, and we then taped stuff off on the floor, and I invited friends over to have some drinks and talk about the table that would be here. Like, is this the right level, or is this the right level, or like, and basically like, I mean, trial and error. Give it a go, and it works. Like it takes longer. And like it is safer, and like I mean, you go to Harvard Business School, they'll probably be like, go all in, make it, you'll make more money. I mean, I imagine that's true as well, but I imagine the risk is higher. So anyway, that's kind of how I run my design consultancy. It's also how I kind of like run the shop and navigate my life as well. It's like, I think I might want to be in this business, like let me check it out, and then like, maybe not, you know? so anyway, I think, I mean, that's kind of it. I guess the success, there's like multiple successes and multiple failures in getting to where life has led me, but I don't know, you know, it's like a search for happiness, I think. Like, as long as you're happy, like, it's all good. And I have to say, I think someone said it earlier, like, being independent, you said it, is like a really cool thing. If you can swing it and you can be creative enough to like figure out what your niche is, it's pretty awesome. So anyhow, I'll leave it at that.
So I'm hoping that we have 2 more speakers, but it is 8:30. Market spaces in the food industry. Tegan works to develop systems for a more accessible and relational local food economy. Her past experience includes founding her own farm-to-bowl meal concept called Canteen & Co., which launched a prototype series of supper clubs and CSA-inspired lunch programs in the greater Boston area. So welcome, Tegan.
Really nerve-wracking to go after all those amazing speakers. My talk also has a bit of a flavor of failing, but more of a falling story. I'm pretty good at falling. And I want to talk about climbing up from rock bottom. So I guess like they say, when you hit rock bottom, the only way you can go is up. And I've hit my rock bottom twice since graduating from college. And then again this summer, I got hit over the head twice, or like literally fell down twice and had 2 concussions. So I've been recovering from that. But I'll paint the picture in a brief menu of 3 courses. Course 1 being Brown Bath. So I'm standing in a Harvard dorm kitchen. It's April 2014, feels like winter. And I'm hovering over an electric stove top, stirring a pot of bone broth. I hate electric stovetops, and I also am frustrated that I'm making bone broth. I'm in this Harvard dorm kitchen, a place that I never thought that I would be again after graduating from school. I just quit my first job out of college, working for a local food truck. I won't name names because that's rude, but if any of you know, this Vietnamese spin-off concept was bold, fresh, and fun. And it had literally been killing me. I had been working 80 plus hours, doing just about everything for this company, filing away permits, drawing up sketches to give to the architects, delivering catering orders, and working the occasional lunch shift downtown. And I was sick. I realized after many visits to the ER, gastroenterologist, I can never say that word, a local naturopath and Eastern medicine doctor, that I had been allergic to like wheat, corn, dairy, gluten, sugar, especially sugar, caffeine, and alcohol, and those are totally off the table for me. Imagine telling that to someone who had studied food in school, had worked in the food industry their whole life, saw her career in food service, and went out to dinner frequently with friends. It was #devastating. So here I am standing over this pot of bone broth, having to reconsider just about everything about my life. I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know what direction my career was going. I was unemployed, and most of all, I didn't know what to eat for dinner. So I'm sitting there with my cup of bone broth while I'm listening to the clink and chatter of the university students upstairs, and I had literally never felt more alone. So flash forward just a couple months, and I'm running on cloud 9. Course 2, roasted squash soup. It's now December 2014, same year, and I'm standing, much as I am today, in front of a group of about 47 people, all wearing ugly Christmas sweaters in Aeronaut Brewery. It was the fourth and final of our community canteen dinner series, which was a family supper club that I had started to be at the scale of a neighborhood, and we were wrapping up with our December meal. And as I'm standing there about to thank all of the guests for coming, thank them for their time and participation in this community-oriented event, I took a moment to pause and take a deep breath. I was feeling a little tingly, much as I was before I got up here to stand, but I had this like sensation running up and down my spine, sort of in my toes, that feeling you get when you like know, yeah, I'm alive. And I thought, this is it. I looked around the room, and in the crowd and along the side, I saw faces of people who meant a lot to me. Over in the corner, there's Dana, who is the chef I had met working at this previous food truck job that I had done. And she was a really talented chef. She had an eye for really bold, flavorful foods and sauces, and she used healthy, fresh ingredients. She was over there scooping Mediterranean chickpea stew into these steel silver canteen bowls that I really loved. Underneath the twinkling lights, serving up beer on the side, was my roommate Morgan, who always has a smile on her face. She's like super happy all the time. It's kind of scary, but she's dishing out beer for everyone as they walked by, and giggling as she did so. Over on the other corner, my friend Anna, who I had met working on Higher Ground Farm, volunteering up on the farm on the top of the design center. If you guys haven't been there, you should go. It's really awesome. And she was rearranging the name tag wall that we had installed for guests as they walked in to make everyone feel included in our space. And then there was my friend Kelsey, who was sort of lurking in the corners, and she was the gal who made all the details possible every single time. And then on the tables, out in the actual eating part of the area, we're full of other foodie friends who I had met in the Somerville area over the past year. There were business designers, there were actual designers, there were artists, there were musicians, there were people who had just stopped by, who were in the neighborhood, who had seen us over at Aeronaut, and there were people who had been coming to these dinners from the other side of the world, like JP, for the past 4 months. There were even a couple folks from New Hampshire and a few farmers there in the mix too, who had actually grown some of the food that we were eating. Something about that moment just felt super special. People had been coming to these dinners and always told us how much the food was amazing, the best they've ever had. They wanted us to cater their events. They were hankering to have Community Canteen come and do a lunch service with them, but it wasn't the food that felt amazing in that moment. It was all these people who had really made these dinners come to life. Kind of like some stone soup. Everyone had chipped in a little bit and made these things happen. And standing there at that moment, I thought this is it. This is who I am and who I want to be. And I remember I didn't actually eat that night. My belly was too full of joy. So there's an epilogue to this story, course 3, dessert. And it involves actually turning this community canteen idea into a business. We registered ourselves as a regular old LLC, got a catering license, got a food service permit, got a space in Malden, Stockpot Kitchen. And we actually started to make this thing happen. We had catering clients around the Somerville, Cambridge area, co-working spaces who subscribed for a weekly lunch service with us. And they loved our food, and we served these farm-to-bowl daily meals at the Kendall Square Farmers Market every Thursday. And this whole one-dish concept really resonated with a lot of our clients. We were a successful food business. We were making a profit after only 4 months of being open because we were operating in a super lean, mean kind of way. But something about it didn't feel right. It didn't give us the same joy that we had felt just a couple months prior. It felt hard. It felt bad. So we decided to let it go. We shut things down in October of 2015, and the 3 of us decided to move on to other things. Truthfully, that was the best decision I think I've ever made in my life. That wasn't my moment to be a business owner, but it was my moment to become a designer. After I started working for the Food Feature Collab, I realized that I had been prototyping and iterating my whole life and just didn't know what that was called. I learned that I approach things from a design research lens, which I didn't even know was a thing. It made my whole experience much more meaningful looking at it backwards through this really expansive and permissive view, that design lens, rather than the sort of gritty, nitty-ditty of business and entrepreneurship. So I'll leave you with one final thought, an after-dinner mint, if you will. But throughout my life, I've found that if you can take your struggles and what's hardest for you in life and turn that into something beautiful you can share with the world, you will never, ever feel lost or unfulfilled. And trust yourself to fail, because you will.
He focuses on portrait, adventure, documentary, food, lifestyle, and education, so really everything. Her work has been featured in Runner's World, Entrepreneur Magazine, and BuzzFeed News, among other places. So welcome, Ian.
Hello. So Jean here was the awesome person from Creative Somerville who reached out to me, and I knew that I was going to do a failure, because I don't know why. It just seemed like the right choice. Like, I couldn't think of a success that I really wanted to talk about, which is kind of perverse and sad in some ways, but I actually have a photo a day I've been doing for the past 3 years, and I looked through all of it, trying to come up with like what story I wanted to tell, and there was no like success story that really stuck with me, which is weird, but you know, things are working out and things are good, so like don't worry about me. But yeah, I wanted to come up with a failure story that I thought people who aren't photographers or filmmakers or anything like that could sort of relate to. And I also am always like stupidly early for everything, so I'll be as concise as humanly possible so you can go drink some nice Aeronaut beer afterward. Gene doesn't work for Aeronaut though, just so you guys know. He works for a competitor. Just trying to stir the pot. So my story doesn't start in Massachusetts like a lot of the stories. I'm gonna start up on a cliff about like 17 hours like northeast of Somerville in northern Quebec on this cliff that's like probably like 600 or 700 feet tall, where there's 4 of us in a climbing party, and we're like maybe 300-400 feet up at this point. And there's 2 guys climbing up above me, and then there's one guy who's belaying one of them down below. And I've got a camera around my neck, and that camera is like really safely, securely attached to me. I'm very safely, securely attached to the anchor that I'm at. And then I have this huge backpack that's got like 300 feet of rope in it. It's like a static rope, so that if anybody saw like the Dawn Wall project, they were always like going up and down. That was like the really cool thing everyone was looking at in New York Times in Yosemite like 2 years ago. They were using static rope. It's like not rope you climb up. It's really heavy. And at the very bottom of my bag, there's like another camera. And we're a week and a half into like a 3-week climbing and canoeing expedition, way the fuck up in northern Quebec, on this river that has no roads, no towns, nobody lives on it. The entire watershed is like completely protected. We took a float plane like an hour north and landed on this river, and they dropped us off with like canoes and all of our climbing stuff and all of our food and everything we need for like 3 weeks of adventure. And they get to the top of the pitch that they're climbing, and at the top they build an anchor, and they need the rope that I have in my backpack so that they can set up a rope that I can just jug up. So I can just climb up that rope. I don't have to do the climbing. I'm not as good as these people who I don't really know, who are much better climbers. I'm just there to take pictures. I'm the photographer for this trip. And I don't want to slow them down. They're all like older. They're all like better rock climbers than me. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go. And I grab the rope and I'm going and going and going, and I just hear the sound. And I don't really like register what the sound is. It's just like like a little whoosh. I'm like, oh, rocks have been falling from up above. Like, nobody's ever climbed on any of these cliffs before, so there's a lot of like things that fall. It's kind of scary. And the guy below me is like, Ian, that was your camera. And like, here I am, I'm like the photographer on this trip, and I have 2 cameras, and we've been out for like a week and a half. We've like done all the climbing that we're like basically gonna do. And that camera has like all of those pictures, and it just like fell down the cliff, and it's like $4,000. It's just like gone. Like there's no way it's gonna be okay. And in that moment, this is the moment that I'm kind of interested in. Is like not like what I could learn from this failure, but really like how I could change my reaction to this moment. So in that reaction, I kind of got really like down on myself. You feel a lot of like shame and guilt. You're like, fuck. Like I am the person that's supposed to take the pictures, so like we can share this. Like I got a grant to do that. Like this is what I'm supposed to do. And I know like, oh, it's gonna take up time for the whole party to like go try to find this camera so we can like find all the pictures. And like there's even this moment where you're like, I somehow like blame them, like somehow it was their fault that they were like rushing me to go. And like this is like a really tragic moment for me, like thinking about it. Because I'm in this beautiful place, I'm in this like epic adventure, this is like what I want to do. And I feel so much like, I don't know, grief and sadness like towards myself and towards the people I'm with. And that's really like harmful. It's not good. Like it's great to take risks. It's great to take like safe risks. It's great to take like tremendous, terrible risks, like putting the giant thing on a trailer without any ropes or anything. And it's important to take those kinds of risks. And it's also important to kind of figure out how to deal with that failure, because it's gonna happen. You're gonna have failure that is terrible, and there's no silver lining to it, and that's okay too. And I think the question that I came to was like, how do we be kind to ourselves in that moment? And then how do we be kind to those around us? And that's kind of like the thing that I think that we can all try to do better. Is like, how do we be kind to ourselves when we royally fuck up? Like, how do we be kind to other people around us when we're in those terrible moments? So the next day, we wake up, and 3 of our dry bags were eaten by porcupines, stupid porcupines. And we like spend probably like a full day like going up and down the cliff trying to find the camera. We end up finding it. It's totally destroyed, but the memory cards work. It didn't rain that night or snow or anything. So we got really lucky. And the whole rest of the trip, it's like I kind of have this like dark cloud overshadowing it, because I just, in that moment of failure, I just didn't do the right thing. I reacted so poorly to myself and to those around me, and it really ruined the whole rest of that experience and ruined sort of like my relationship with these like 3 other climbers. And so the takeaway message for me is like, have that automatic reaction after you fail. Like, shoot, I shouldn't have done that terrible thing. I should have thought about it, but then laugh about it. Because it's funny, it's like, whatever, like life happens, like it's just a camera, you can replace it, nobody got hurt, it wasn't a rock, nobody got hit in the head. And then just be nice to people and be nice to yourself and forgive yourself. So go out there, do stupid stuff, like try to start a food company or start a brewery or start a design company and fail, and don't learn anything from that failure, but just be nice to people. Because like, what's the point if you're not nice to yourself, and what's the point if you're not nice to people around you? Because you're being a freelancer or an entrepreneur because you want to do your own thing, you want to be yourself, so just be nice to yourself.